Welcome back to another episode of ROC Boys Football, taking a look at a 2023 NFL mock draft from Chris Trapasso of CBS Sports. The fellas like to take a look at other people's mock drafts, get a feel for what other people are thinking about these prospects and potential position fits, and then giving you guys our takes on it. Before we get into it, though, just want to say thank you guys for the support you guys shown. Truly means a lot. We have a blast talking football with you guys in the comment section, trying to get through as many mock drafts as we can as we lead up to the NFL draft. So if you guys have any questions or comments or disagree with any of our takes, let us know in the comments section. We love talking football with you guys. And again, the support truly means a lot. You guys have been absolutely awesome. Almost at 4,400 subscribers. That's absolutely insane. So again, if you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Dill, let's get into it. And we'll start with a little quarterback talk. Although we've talked a lot about quarterbacks the last couple weeks. But the Panthers obviously trading up to that number one spot. They go Anthony Richardson. That's obviously not the position we would go or the player we would go with. Give us a little take on Anthony Richardson going over guys like Bryce Young and CJ Stroud.
I just can't see how you do it. It's like the levels in the college game were so vastly higher from Bryce Young and CJ Stroud. And it's not like those guys are wildly capped guys. I mean, Bryce Young has a really good arm, really accurate, throws a nice deep ball. CJ Stroud, one of the most in terms of arm talent, almost as good as I've ever seen. I mean, you just see how he puts the ball pretty much wherever he wants at any point. I just don't see how you pass up two of like those guys. Now you take either of them one for me, for Anthony Richardson, who again, yeah, he's got a high ceiling, but you just didn't see the level at
I wonder if they bring in Dalton as the Chris Trapasso mentions, the bridge quarterback, the red rifle coming back, being like the veteran quarterback that maybe gets you through a year and then lets Anthony Richardson sit the bench, be ready for that 2024 season. But with that being said, I'm with you, and I just have concerns. Like, can you fix some of what Anthony Richardson struggles with? Like, is he just going to be a guy that misses those throws? That's the number one question if you're a GM, if you're a scout taking Anthony Richardson, is how much of it is correctable versus like he just doesn't have it? Because again, a guy like Josh Allen, very similar concerns coming out of Wyoming. Obviously, the Buffalo Bills thought, okay, that's correctable stuff. We'll see what GMs and scouts think of Anthony Richardson, because I think there's going to be some scouts and GMs that are just like, you might just not be able to correct some of the stuff Anthony Richardson has. But if you do feel good about being able to get him right and him being able to reach that potential he has, I can certainly see the pick. Bryce Young going to the Houston Texans, I think that's perfect. You're seeing that in a lot of mocks. I think it would make a lot of sense. And then what I want to talk about, and something where I think is getting kind of like brushed under the rug, is the Cardinals are sitting there at 3 and everyone's mocking them to get Will Anderson.
That pick's tradable. 100%.
It's tradable. 100%.
Because, like, again, you look at, there are no quarterbacks out of the top 4. And in my opinion, I don't really think there's guys out of the top 2 that I'm really, like, selling out to go get and trade up for. But I do think at the end of the day, 2 teams are going to love Will Levis and Anthony Richardson, and they'll be plenty comfortable jumping up to that 3 pick.
And if this draft, and I had my recent mock, had the 4 quarterbacks going in the first 4 picks, CJ Stroud going 4. Again, you guys know how we feel on this quarterback position. It's Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, Will Levis for us. But if these 4 quarterbacks go in the first 4 picks, I mean, you're looking at Seattle Seahawks and the Detroit Lions just benefiting in a big way. Now, you see Tyree Wilson going over Will Anderson. In my mind, absolutely ludicrous. I get what you see with Tyree Wilson, but what you saw from Will Anderson the last 2 years at Alabama was some next level stuff. Yes, I like Tyree Wilson. I think the potential is there, but Will Anderson's a freak show.
Yeah, it has to be. And you don't put up like those numbers he was putting up were insane, especially as a true sophomore. Would he have like 30 tackles for a loss? Like those numbers are truly insane. And again, you're looking at Tyree Wilson, a guy who came on late into the last year of college he played, and he was dominant at times for sure. But man, it's hard for me to pass up Will Anderson. Frankly, it's hard to pass up Myles Murphy too. I thought those guys for like 3 years in college just were really good players right through.
I think the biggest beneficiary of 4 quarterbacks going in the first 4, the Seattle Seahawks seemingly are going to have their choice, because it does seem like at least 3 quarterbacks are going in the first 4 picks, which means Seattle will have their choice between Jalen Carter, Will Anderson. If 4 quarterbacks go in the first 4 picks, there's no bigger winner. There will be no bigger winner of the NFL draft in my mind than the Detroit Lions, who get their choice of Jalen Carter, Will Anderson. You're probably leaning Jalen Carter because I think you feel a little bit better about the edge position in Detroit than you do on the inside. Jalen Carter, Dill, I want to ask you, obviously you saw the pro as I move my mic here. You saw the pro day concerns.
Pro days don't matter to a guy who's of Jalen Carter's ilk. He's just so dominant on the field. Pro days matter for guys who are on the fence, I think. And Jalen Carter is so far away from being that. He just like a perfect defensive tackle prospect. Really good athlete, big, strong, plays with good technique. Like there's just nothing to quibble about with his on the field play.
Yeah, and that would be just such a in Detroit, and I feel like Jalen Carter would be such a good landing spot for Detroit because he's a guy that if you have any concerns about like him fitting into the NFL, the character concerns, as we don't like to bring up that much, I don't think there's many stronger locker rooms and leaders than having him go into that Detroit Lions franchise. I think you're going to get the best out of him at Detroit, and I think that would be just an absolutely dynamite pick for Detroit. Going to 7 and 8, again, another steal of the draft here. Will Anderson Jr. falling to the Raiders. I'm interested to hear the Raiders' perspective. So if you have a quarterback available at pick 7, like, are you going with the Will Levis or Anthony Richardson at pick 7? Jimmy G maybe being the bridge guy? I don't think so. I think this Raiders team will have a select, whether it's Will Anderson, whether it's Jalen Carter, whether it's Tyree Wilson, Myles Murphy. I think the Raiders can't pass up on such a blue chip prospect at 7 to go and get a quarterback that probably is not starting for the first couple of years.
I'm not going to lie. Richardson is wildly tempting at 7 for the Raiders. You look at Jimmy G, I just don't think you win a Super Bowl with him. If he couldn't win with those Niners teams, that's just a guy who's not going to win a Super Bowl because like those Niners teams aside from him.
The thing with that is people forget that he's been injured, and then when he was fully healthy, he legitimately took them to the Super Bowl and lost to the best quarterback in the league, Patrick Mahomes. I don't get the Jimmy G hate.
No, I don't. I think that at this point, like again, and health has been an issue, but it's also not been a one-off. That's been pretty much every year consistent.
Yes, the durability is a concern, and that's where if you're the Raiders, would you go up and just get a guy like Paris Johnson Jr., Broderick Jones, Peter Skoronski, who are if you're the Jimmy G's not the most mobile guy, you got to give him a pocket to throw from, and when you do, and San Francisco is able to do that for him, he's really, really good, but I think you got to work on that offensive line if you're the Raiders. And that might not be the best pick available or prospect available at 7, but I don't hate them going with a guy like Peter Skoronski, who you know is going to give you 4 or 5 years, potentially 10 to 12 years of really, really good offensive line play.
In that case, you just trade it back.
Yeah.
If you're gonna go tackle, just trade back from 7 if you can.
Especially if a quarterback's still on the board.
You got 3-4 guys interchangeable at tackle who I think all can play really well with Harrison, Skoronski, Broderick Jones, and Paris Johnson. So I think you trade back if you're going to take a tackle there.
So pick 8, pick 9, Nolan Smith to the Falcons. We obviously are big Nolan Smith fans. Again, this is not me not liking Nolan Smith. It's more just the disrespect for Myles Murphy continues. I think Myles Murphy's okay if you have Tyree Wilson over Myles Murphy, but the fact that Myles Murphy is dropping in these edge rankings to like 4, 5, 6 is ludicrous in my mind. You get a really, really good player in Nolan Smith. He stays in the state of Georgia, but passing on Myles Murphy. And then Lukas Van Ness to the Bears. Again, another guy that's just such a project, and you want to build around Justin Fields. You have a guy like Quentin Johnson. You have a guy like Peter Skoronski, Paris Johnson Jr. on the board. I don't get why you would take a developmental edge player in Lukas Van Ness here.
No, not when you have Myles Murphy on this board. And just like these two guys are guys who have been very much rising postseason. And Nolan Smith, in fairness, was really good at Georgia. He wasn't Myles Murphy good in college, but he was a productive player. Lukas Van Ness, very much the opposite, not wildly productive, had a few flash moments, and you can tell there's some traits. But Myles Murphy has traits, and he's was dominant in college.
I don't get the Myles Murphy just being like a subpar athlete that people are treating. And again, even if Myles Murphy's on the board here for the Bears, I want that number 9 pick to go around building around Justin Fields, because if he's your franchise guy, you got to find out in the next 2 years, and taking Lukas Van Ness is not going to get you any closer to help finding it out. And I like what they did with the trade, but I still think you got to get some pieces on the offensive side of the ball to help Justin Fields cook a little bit, if you will. Pick 10, pick 11. I'm with it. Christian Gonzalez has cemented himself as my cornerback one. I'm kind of interested to hear your takes, but I feel like the film is there. Like Christian Gonzalez's film is very solid. Probably not as good as a guy like Devon Witherspoon, but the traits are next level. And I feel like, it is getting nitpicky. And these cornerback, the top three guys, Joey Porter Jr., Witherspoon, and Gonzalez, you kind of have to get nitpicky with. They're all pretty bona fide prospects. Christian Gonzalez is just the superior athlete in this class, and people aren't talking about enough. Like Witherspoon is not a very big cornerback.
Yeah, and Gonzalez, a way bigger guy, moves way better. And a point you like to bring up, way more battle tested at the college level. I mean, he was going up against top dogs in that Pac-12 against like teams like Washington or
US, yeah.
He was handling himself for sure and was dominating. And Witherspoon was dominating too for sure, probably dominating a little more. But he was playing the Big Ten West and didn't see Ohio State. So it's like when you don't see Ohio State, it's hard to prove yourself in the Big Ten as being a dynamic.
Yeah, again, his biggest matchup was Aiden O'Connell and Charlie Jones, that's no disrespect. That's a very good passing offense, but that was 1 week, and he really wasn't.
Marvin Harris. Yeah.
Broderick Jones going to 11. I like it. Again, I'm a Paris Johnson Jr. guy. You probably won't see another mock. If Tennessee stays at 11, Paris Johnson Jr. is on the board here. I don't see how you don't take Paris Johnson Jr. Broderick Jones would be my second pick for Tennessee. But again, kind of interchangeable. I just lean Paris Johnson Jr. because I do think he's a little bit more of the athlete than Broderick Jones is.
In the power one game, you want Paris Johnson.
Paris Johnson's an absolute mauler in there. Tennessee fans, it's a match made in heaven for me. Now, Bryan Bresee going 12. I'm extremely happy to see it. Let's get some love for my guy, Bryan Bresee.
And again, we've been talking as Bills fans, like that's the dream.
I hope he falls.
The dream is that the NFL GMs are just going to be haters and
nerds.
Them up. But like you watch this guy, he came in as a freshman and looked like he was the strongest player on the field. Great athlete when he's going at 100%. And again, I think another year getting healthy after the ACL, you see him start rounding back into what he was as a freshman, just as a developed kind of man, if you will. He's going to dominate the NFL, I think.
Yeah, and again,
he's very JJ Watt early in college.
He's the true freshman in early sophomore film for Bryan Bresee. Some next level stuff, and I feel like people are just too quick to forget about it. Pick 13. This isn't like I find the offensive line fits kind of weird. Like Paris Johnson Jr. in my mind makes all the sense in the world to go to Tennessee, and then in New York, like I love Paris Johnson Jr. I like the Peter Skoronski fit here because you're not really sure where you're going to need help on the offensive line. You just know you need help. And Peter Skoronski seems like a guy that you bring in for that New York Jets, and whether he's playing tackle, whether he's playing guard, he's going to be damn good for you. Paris Johnson Jr., obviously the best tackle on the board on my board, but Peter Skoronski in terms of fit makes a little bit more sense.
Yeah, and I get that. And again, I think it's really hard to differentiate these tackles, but I feel what you're saying. I think if you were to ask me who's going to start day one more likely, it's certainly Peter Skoronski.
And our first wide receiver off the board is our guy, Jaxon Smith-Njigba, who is moving up my boards. I still am leaning Quentin Johnston just because I think Quentin Johnston's skill set separates him a little bit more in terms of like we don't see in this draft class that many big and fluid athletes like a big Q Johnston. But Jaxon Smith-Njigba would make a lot of sense in this Patriots offense, especially with what Mac Jones wants to do. Not necessarily pushing the ball down the field, but more working that short intermediate game. There's not a better wide receiver in this class than JSN there.
And that's a team that needs help. That's a good fit for them, I think. I think he works really well with what Mac Jones is doing. And just an elite wideout. Maybe not the elite athlete, but an elite wide receiver.
Pick 15, the Packers go get Dalton Kincaid.
Feels high.
It's high. I think I love this tight end class, but I think tight ends in the top 20. I don't even know if Luke Musgrave is my tight end one, and maybe I see him going back end of the first, but time and time again, we see these tight ends get taken so high and just not be the impact makers you think they will be at the next level. Just from a pure trend standpoint, I'm shying away from taking a tight end in the top 15.
Yeah, and I get that. I
like
think
Dalton Kincaid.
That's for sure. Like I like Kincaid. The problem is I don't think he's a gigantic tight end, or he's just factually not. and he's also not a incredible.
Actually not.
He's not like an incredible athlete. He's a good athlete. He's just really solid, but really solid is not a top 15.
He's factually not big though. 6'4", 240. Like the scale. Like I'm factually big, working on it. Haven't gone to the physical lately. Hoping for 5'8" though. Pick 16, Deonte Banks. I'm not with it. Like he's one of those guys that I'm just not sold as a top 32 guy. And you look how deep this cornerback class is. I'm a Joey Porter Jr. guy. I'm a Devon Witherspoon guy. I'm not sure if I'm taking Deonte Banks before those two guys.
Yeah, Deonte Banks just doesn't stick with guys like those other two. And I get like there's some traits, big and really athletic.
He tested so well.
But he doesn't have the same cover skills, I don't think, yet. That the Joey Porter Jr., another bigger corner, and
he just hasn't played that much football. Like 2 games in 2021, only 5 in 2020. Like he hasn't. The sample size isn't great. I think the film this year was pretty solid, but the sample size in general not great.
Look, you got great tight ends on the board, corners, I should say.
Pick 17, Calijah Kancey. So this pick, I feel like there's 2 ways the Steelers go. They go cornerback, where it's you getting a Gonzalez, Witherspoon, or Joey Porter Jr. And Joey Porter Jr. is still on the board. I don't know how the Steelers are packing off him. And then you're either going the best tackle available. And I think Paris Johnson Jr., Broderick Jones are probably the 2 best fits. But if Peter Skoronski's on the board, I think you also pick him. Calijah Kancey, just 6'1", 280 pounds. I get that the film is really good, but Dale, the more I think about it and the more I've watched him, the more I'm kind of coming to your side in the sense that is that going to translate to the NFL? And are you that confident that you're taking a guy with pick 17 that it's going to translate to the next level?
I mean, you don't see it a ton. I can't think of the last D tackle who is that small.
I can think of him. He went to Pitt as well.
Oh yeah, but that's saying like that's almost like using the Josh Allen comp. Like, do you really want to draft quarterbacks who are really inaccurate coming into the league? Most of them honestly don't shake out. It's like Josh Allen did. Aaron Donald, he's like an enigma. He's the best player like we've ever seen in a sense, but you just like betting or taking those odds that you're going to get another guy who can play at that size. It's just it's a long shot. That's all.
Especially now we're talking about, and this would be what a phenomenal draft and steal this would be. I have the Lions in a mock taking Myles Murphy at 6 overall. If he's there at pick 18, I think you're thrilled. And a lot of the Detroit fans are saying, "Oh, you're kind of good with the edge rusher." Like Myles Murphy's just so much more than just a pure edge rusher. Like he's so good against the run. And again, he is an elite pass rusher as well. When you turn on the 2021 film, I think he fits what Detroit wants to do on defense perfectly.
After pick 13, anybody could take Myles Murphy. I don't care who their edge rushers are.
That defense gets so much better with that. Would be as an honorary Detroit Lions fan, that would be just such an awesome draft for Detroit. Jalen Carter at 6, Myles Murphy at 18. Pick 19, the Bucs going Darnell Wright. He's a mover up the board. Daniel Jeremiah just released a question that like Darnell Wright checks all the boxes. He's a good athlete. He had a really good 2022 film. All the traits are there in terms of length and size. You saw one good year of Darnell Wright. The other years he's really struggled. So yeah, you like to see the improvement. You saw really good years consistently from Peter Skoronski. I don't know if I'm going Darnell Wright over Skoronski yet.
Yeah, and I honestly think the tighter comp is with Anton Harrison, both bigger, stronger tackles, not the elite movers that the other 3 at the top of the board are. But that's the thing. I just thought Anton Harrison, again, he's played a little more consistent for the time he was at Oklahoma, and I just think he's a slightly better athlete.
I think Anton Harrison's ceiling's a little high. Like Anton Harrison's still a young buck, like 21 years old. Darnell Wright's been in it for a little bit.
I like Darnell Wright, but I think he's going to be a right tackle. I think he's going to be a really, really good right tackle, but I think Anton Harrison can play them both and maybe gives you a little more flexibility.
So Zay Flowers going over Quentin Johnson, going over Jordan, and we're Zay Flowers fans over here. And a lot of the Seahawks fans have been kind of on me for taking wide receiver at 20, and I kind of get it. Like when you look at that Seattle team, like you want to address the defense side of the ball, you need a linebacker. You could build 2 picks on the trenches. I don't hate the wide receiver pick at 20. I would go with Quentin Johnson though.
Yeah, like if you're sitting at 20 and Johnson hasn't been taken, yeah, you're taking Quentin Johnson. And Zay Flowers is a good player, but I think he is not. I don't see him coming in being a true number one on any team. I think he's a really good,
I don't think the
with the
Seahawks would
ball in
take him to be a
versatile
true
ways.
number one. And partially maybe why you like the fit, that he brings something that DK doesn't bring.
He does complement DK better, but it's hard to pass up Johnson at 20 when
Witherspoon 21. That's just a best player available. Maybe not the biggest need for the Chargers, but if you do have a guy like Witherspoon, who most mocks have him as a top 10 guy coming off the board, probably go take him. And again, size concerns maybe, but so smooth. Like this guy they played pretty much man coverage exclusively under Ryan Walters at Illinois, and Witherspoon was just so good at it. Quentin Johnson going off the board at 22. You saw the Rashad Bateman tweet, very upset at the GM at the combine, going, we haven't found our wide receiver yet, but we're going to keep swinging. I think they're going to find their wide receiver in Quentin Johnson. That being said, you have a lot more questions to answer in this offseason if you're Baltimore than Quentin Johnson right now.
I mean, they got to give whoever's playing quarterback there. It doesn't feel like Lamar's going to be back at this point. I just feel like that relationship's been so poisoned. But whoever's playing needs a shot. You need a better shot. And I get a lot of people like to get on Lamar about passing efficiency and
Lamar's awesome. The Ravens are.
Well, that's what I'm saying, but they haven't given him a shot. They've been horrible drafting wideouts. They haven't signed any really productive free agents. They've had tight ends, but
they threw Sammy Watkins in there. Come on now.
But like that's the problem is like Sammy Watkins has been trying to patch up holes on teams for a long time. He's definitely way past his prime.
He's bouncing around.
It's like the Packers took a shot, then
it's hard to keep track, but he's been bouncing around, and I'm actually kind of with you. It seems like they just like bring in some older wide receivers to try to just like make something work, and getting a guy like Quentin Johnson.
They haven't given a guy like a Stephon Diggs or a big in AJ Brown. They haven't like given any real wideouts a good contract and brought anyone with any real juice.
Pick 23, Joey Porter Jr. going to the Vikings. We like cornerback for the Vikings. If Joey Porter Jr. is there at 23, I think you're hammering it. Even a guy like Emmanuel Forbes, I think would be worth a pick at 23. I think that Joey Porter Jr. is phenomenal. And Anton Harrison, I think this is another good pick. And Anton Harrison, I think a lot of college or draft fans in general should get familiar with the name, because I think he's going to be higher on teams' boards than you see right now.
I agree. And I think, again, I don't think he looks like the top guys from the past couple of years. He doesn't have that athleticism, but I think he's way stronger than most of them.
He's so
strong. I think that's how, again, that covers up for a lot, because he doesn't need to be in perfect position a lot of times because his upper body
is film is so weird, because you think just like someone's just going to get right into him and then he just eats you up. And he's so strong. And then the Giants, like I get the Giants. I would probably go Jordan Addison here too if he's available, but if Peter Skronsky is here at pick 25, I don't think you can pass on him.
No, that's a really nice pick.
And that offensive line is coming along now, right? Anthony Thomas, Evan Neal, not Anthony Thomas, Andrew Thomas, excuse me, Evan Neal. I was like, Anthony Thomas does not sound right. And then Peter Skronsky at guard. Like that is some guys that we've absolutely loved in the draft process, all on the same team. You can sign me up for that. This pick doesn't. I mean, you're gonna get rid of Zeke, so I think Bijan could be on the board at 26. Darnell Washington, they said it right. He's a 6th offensive lineman. I don't know about his receiving chops. I think he can do it. I'm higher on his receiving capability than most. But are you gonna take a 6th offensive lineman at 26 overall or what?
I'm certainly not a Darnell Washington.
I'm a Darnell guy,
round guy, and I get the player. I think he's a day 2 pick, but in the first round, I don't see Darnell.
And I'm a Darnell. You won't find many people higher on Darnell Washington than me, and I'm not at 26 with him. I'm not at 26 with him. And 26, Dill, we can maybe a little early to pull the trigger for our Buffalo Bills on Jack Campbell, but
no, I love it.
I would love Jack Campbell suiting up for the Buffalo.
I think Jack Campbell is, to me, best linebacker in this class, and I don't think it's wildly close. I think I think the amount of he's not the premier athlete. Watch the film, watch how good he plays against teams like Ohio State. He's productive in the pass game. You don't see him getting beat up. gets his hands on footballs in zone coverage. He played far better than anyone else, I thought, at linebacker.
Pick 28, Bijan Robinson, Joe Mixon potentially on the move. That would have to happen first, you would think. Bijan Robinson's a guy that I'm not going to complain for whatever team takes him, because when it comes to offensive playmakers, I think he's the best offensive playmaker in this draft with how I feel about the wide receivers. I want to talk a little bit more about, I see Jahmyr Gibbs going to and if I see this comp being replacing Alvin Kamara, I'm gonna have to take on my sweatshirt. I'm gonna get all hot and bothered here. I better not see the.
Oh, yep, it is.
Gibbs has, yep, yeah, no. See, because he wears the turf tape on his arms, that people think he's in. Yeah, he might look a little bit like Alvin Kamara, but he's certainly not as big as Alvin Kamara. I thought he tested better. I didn't think he tested that well, but he's not Alvin Kamara. He's much closer to a guy like James Cook. You're not taking him in the top 30.
He doesn't run in the tackles. Alvin Kamara, people forget, he's got one of the better contact balances, and for a guy who's not the biggest.
Because he's 215 pounds, not 195.
I know, and he runs with a good center of gravity or whatever, and he's just again, that's one of those other comps. It felt like coming out of college, because he didn't take a ton of snaps. People kind of put him into a box of not a pure runner. He is certainly a pure running back. He does everything really well, catches well, runs between the tackles. Again, Gibbs, I actually am way higher on him than you.
No, the thing is, I like Jahmyr Gibbs. I don't like him as a top 30 guy, and I certainly don't like him as the next Alvin Kamara.
Yeah, and again, even just saying next Alvin Kamara, you better be because he's
So you lose Hargrave. I get going interior defensive line. I haven't seen Jalen Redmond.
That guy is part of my sleeper list. I actually love the player. I think I don't know that I'm taking him at pick in the first round. I think he's more 4th, 5th round.
Yeah,
he'll be a really good pick in that. But to take him here, he's
okay. Philly fans, if we're thinking of smaller interior defense linemen that can give you the pass rush that Javon Hargrave gave you, I think Moro Jomo would be a guy to take a look at. A little bit smaller of an interior dude, but it's early for Jalen Redmond. Could be a great Eagles fit in the 4th or 5th round.
Yeah, that's just this is just a pick. I really like the player. I think he's a big, athletic, long arms. I like what he does, but it's high. Because you're right, a guy like Moro Jomo, I thought was quite a bit more disruptive.
I'm like some other guys, and again, it's maybe a little thin in the 3 tech position. You see a lot more Mozzie Smith, Siaki Ika, Keanu Benton, but a guy like Moro Jomo, I think would be a nice fit.
Nonetheless, even if you're gonna pick Jalen Redmond, just don't pick him at this pick, because you definitely don't need to. You can love this player, but this is just not where you're taking him.
And I get getting your guy. It just maybe take him in the round 3 if he's really your guy, because he'll be there. He'll be there. Pick 31, Will McDonald, who's a guy that I like. One of the best pass rushers from this edge position in the class. When you stack up against
pick for the Chiefs, you see what they like in edge rushers. It is very much not Will McDonald. It is the bigger 260 plus. Frank Clark, big D end. Karlaftis, big D end. I don't see them actually making this pick. They like big D linemen.
Yeah. But to talk about the prospect, Will McDonald, he's a guy that I've actually liked to watch, because his juice around the corner, what he said, juice around the corner, that's there. He's got a great get off. He knows how to rush the passer from that outside. And you didn't really see him do it that much, because he's lining much more over tackles as opposed to that 5 tech that most edge rushers get to run or rush the passer off of. But Will McDonald put up some serious numbers from not exactly ideal spots. Other guys like Felix Anaduke, Uzama from Kansas State would be a guy. Yeah, it's your guy. Tommy Adebawore, I think, is getting himself into this kind of list. And I like Will McDonald that's about where I like him. Maybe a little rich for me, but I think it'd be a solid pick for Kansas City. But I think you do make a good point. Not necessarily Kansas City's type of guy. That'll round us out again. Taking a look at some other people's mocks, giving you some opinions on some players that we don't normally do. We don't talk about Jalen Redmond much. got a chance to talk about Jalen Redmond, Will McDonald, some guys we don't normally see, and guys that we talk about. Again, appreciate you guys checking us out as usual. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel, and we'll talk to y'all later.